Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, a killing machine with no past and no future. And yeah, I'm coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. But hey, the gang gets together for this movie, and I've got my own gang to get together for this podcast. So who's here with me?
Well, it's the scrapyard son of a bitch, Steve Guntley, here from Austin, Texas. And this is the podcast about robot sidekicks, magnetic arms, and fish ninjas. That's because this is a podcast all about Eliminators, a 1986 adventure from some of our favorite Empire writers, Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo. Very excited to be talking about these guys again. And we're very excited to be joined by our very own Bayou Betty here again, back on the show. Who is with us, Jared?
When we did our transfers episode, it was so early in the run of the show. It was just me and you, Steve. But then we couldn't really go back to a Bilson and DeMeo script without bringing on, the expert who was here to talk about Arena with us. And honestly, we got so many people after that episode dropped saying, Shea was amazing. When is she coming back on the show? Well, today is the day that she's coming back on the show. Shea Mossefin, the distributor that you know as Black Video, just a ton of knowledge about old, sci-fi and horror and B movies and everything like that, and VHS as an art form. I'm going to stop now because I'm rambling. Shea, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh my goodness, I'm blown away. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back, and I am so stoked to talk about the movie chosen for today.
Well, Shea, am I wrong in saying this, but did you say on microphone or maybe in an exchange off that this is your favorite Empire movie?
It's probably, to be honest. There is a close second with, I don't know, I do love Arena and I do love Robot Jocks. I don't know, they're all on the same kind of level, but I think I have the most sentimental love for the Eliminators.
Okay. I took that away from this. I thought that I got that in my brain somewhere, that this one was your favorite and that it was really fortuitous that you were coming back for it.
You're absolutely right. And wow, yeah, this ranks up there not only as one of my favorite Empire movies, but also one of the favorite screenings I've ever done with my friends. We used to do sort of, sort of canon bad movie nights that actually rad movie nights. And that's something I'd like to talk about a little more when we get into the nuts and bolts of the Eliminators, no pun intended. But yeah, it walks a really fine line between being completely earnest and completely silly.
I have the same note. Yeah, it's just like it's simultaneously parodying all these different tropes and genres while still fully embracing them, like shamefacedly, just like loving it.
Yes. And it's just such a crowd pleaser that, I don't know, we were not just laughing, we were like punching the air, hooping and hollering, wiping our eyes, just one scene after the other. And I don't know, it's pretty rare when that happens. And I would love to talk more about why it is that way. And
Yeah. So Shea, you are a return guest. You're one of our earlier return guests. We've had just a few so far, but we're really excited to have you back. But it's been a little while since you were here. So really quickly, just let us know, like, what have you been up to in the short amount of time that since we were last with you?
Absolutely. So I've slowed down a little bit, but not because I've really wanted to, just because things have been taking some time. I've been working on the Dr. Death release for a few years now.
Cool.
The post-apocalyptic Super 8 film shot by Webster Colcord in Eugene, Oregon in 1989.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing film. And he's going to be including some animation to accompany the film. And we always get really close, and then we'll both have a brilliant idea, like, for example, doing an animated intro or something like that. And we keep pushing it back. So it's going to be happening this year, but probably in the fall. But the thing I do have coming out, it will be out by the time this episode airs, is The Boys' Night Out from 1989 as well. And that was made by my good friend Peter, who actually co-hosted the movie night that I mentioned earlier. He and I have been doing these movie nights together for over 15 years. And he made a film when he was 14. about a toxic waste site inside of a quarry and a bunch of bullies who push the local nerd into the toxic waste site. And he emerges a bag-headed toxic mutant in the vein of Toxic Avenger.
You say that sounds a little familiar. Yeah.
It's very teenager shot on video. There's this sort of thread through most even international teenager shot on video horror films where there's usually some kind of forested environment. There's usually a toxic waste puddle. There's usually background and incidental sounds and effects and music played on a boombox, like insane wigs. And this is the perfect example of that kind of movie. And he made it when his good friend was still with us. His friend passed away. So it feels like a really sweet posthumous, I guess, nod to the friendship that they had and to the punk rock scene and the metal scene in Wisconsin in the late 80s. And it sat on a shelf for 35 years. And he put a few finishing touches on it to basically make it continuous that he shot on video. And now we're putting it out. So that'll be
that's great.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I love stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but like when I was a teenager too, some friends of mine made, a little camcorder horror movie, not even really shot on like Super 8 or anything, just like a camcorder onto VHS. And it was just so silly. I mean, remember, we didn't even have a backstory for it. We tried to shoot scenes individually, and like it was just that there was a killer who was sort of sack-headed also, but he had like one of those car ice scrapers that's a glove on his hand. And that's all. That's all you need to know. Except for we bought fake blood and we had it like in a super soaker or something, and we ruined my friend's uncle's bathroom because we sprayed fake blood all over the walls and they wouldn't come out.
That'll do it. That would do it.
But I mean, I love hearing stuff like that because that's the shit that we did. And it's like if you're a video store kid and you're a horror nerd, and it's like that's just what you do. It's like it's a rite of passage, and so I'm so glad that someone had the foresight to like go back and finish this kind of product. And we're going to talk about a finished product today known as Eliminators from 1986. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and fire off some stats about this movie before we get into it?
Sure. Eliminators was released January 31st, 1986. It's directed by Peter Manoogian. It's written by Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, and it stars Andrew Prine, Denise Crosby, Patrick Reynolds, Conan Lee, Peggy Mannix, Peter Schramm, and Roy Dotrice. Weirdly, the movie I was thinking about the most when I was watching this one was another recent Empire film that we covered, Vicious Lips, which we described as a movie that was like on its way to being a great cult film and then crash lands on a planet and like dicks around and does nothing for the remainder of the runtime. So that's a movie that ran out of ideas and like just kind of puttered around until the movie ended. This is a movie that maybe ran out of ideas and compensated by throwing in more ideas. Just like, I know it sounds like kind of a nonsensical way to put it, but literally this is a movie that is trying to be all movies simultaneously. It is just this rich, like melange of 80s action movie tropes that almost feels like a parody of itself already, and in like a knowing way too. Like we discussed with Arena, like Bilson and DeMeo are big movie buffs and they love like classic films and they love these like classic serials and tough guy movies like that. So Arena was just like a little bit of Buck Rogers and a little bit of Rocky and all these other like old boxing movies. And this one is just kind of running with that ball even further and just saying, okay, this is a little bit of Terminator, and this is a little bit of Time Bandits, and this is a little bit of Apocalypse Now, and this is a little bit of the African Queen, and it's
those were the two movies that I was going to name. I was going to say this movie kind of stops in the middle and becomes either Apocalypse Now or the African Queen. Yeah,
it's a little bit of both. Like you look at this poster and you look at this premise and you think, okay, a cyborg, a ninja, a mercenary, and a sexy scientist joined together to commit time crimes, and you'd be surprised how much of this movie takes place in a boat in the bayou, like for that kind of setup that they have. But it never slows down and it never really stops. We'll get more into the details of it, but this is the feature-length debut of Peter Manoogian, who cut his teeth working on The Dungeon Master. And it's actually one of the last Manoogians we're going to talk about. He had kind of a short stay with Full
Yeah.
Moon and Empire, but it was a very memorable one because he did Arena, he did Seed People, he did Demonic Toys, and then he did this one. And there's a few more I think in there that we're going to cover. But yeah, we're coming to the end of the Peter Manoogian phase. And this has a cool, kind of interesting cast here. Obviously, we have an early role for Denise Crosby, the future Tasha Yar from Star Trek.
The
TNG.
future star of Dolly Dearest.
That's right. And Pet Cemetery. Yeah, a few others. Yeah. So she's good in this. Michael Prine, who plays Fontana, is one of those, like, he's one of those actors who had a 1 or 2 episode arc on every television show from like 1960 to 2015. You know, he just was in everything, but maybe never necessarily jumped out at you. But he broke out playing Helen Keller's brother in The Miracle Worker, and like the Oscar-winning film version of The Miracle Worker, and then just kind of worked steadily for 60 years. We lost him in 2022, but he basically just never stopped working. He's got close to 200 film and TV credits, and he's just everywhere. And then we have Conan Lee, who kind of comes in very late in this movie. He's the ninja character Koji. He's just like a really acclaimed martial artist who's worked with Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and a whole bunch of other people. He was one of the stunt coordinators on Big Trouble in Little China and is still an active advisor and like special effects artist. And this is the most interesting one, I think. Patrick Reynolds, the guy who plays the Mandroid here, is the grandson of R.J. Reynolds, the tobacco magnate. Okay, so his family is responsible for like the majority of the cigarettes that have been produced in this country. And he completely disavows the family business, so much so that after this movie, he retired from acting, and his whole job now is being an anti-smoking advocate. He's got one of the largest anti-smoking nonprofits in the world. And it has gone international now. Like they've been really, really effective in changing smoking laws. So kind of an interesting thing. Like the man literally spent his life like trying to correct his family's legacy. That's just kind of a really interesting, that's an interesting person.
I think I read also that he dated Shelley Duvall when she was making Nashville.
Wow. Okay.
And that he went on the set and ended up playing a bit role and then sort of fell out of the film biz for a while, then went back to be in Eliminators. And I also remember hearing at some point that Charles Band is not a fan of smoking. He tends to not like to put smoking in his films. And he even said that once on a podcast I was listening to. He was like, yeah, I don't like smoking. So if people want to smoke in it, that's fine. I'm not going to stop them, but I don't want to put it in my films. I kind of wonder if he got, or if he knew about Patrick Reynolds because of that. Who knows?
I'm wondering. Yeah. No. Band is a bit of a health nut, I think, and so he's aged very well. You know, he's done well for himself, and and it's just kind of an interesting thing that the cyborg driving around in a little truck in this movie is actually made some real effect on public policy regarding smoking. So,
well, you're right that he retired from acting, but not for want of trying initially, because to me, one of the most interesting things about Patrick Reynolds is that he actually was the one of the 3 potential finalists, some unknown actor, Patrick Reynolds, and then Sir Patrick Stewart to play Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Wow.
God.
I can't even really imagine that.
Wow.
Like, no, because he was quite a bit younger at that time too, or at least like looked younger. It just looked much less distinguished, much more of a Kirk energy, actually.
Yeah, like Picard. I mean, when Patrick Stewart started playing the role of Picard, he was already, I think he was cast at age 46. Yeah, he was already bald, so it sort of made him look a little bit older, I think. But and I'm guessing that Patrick Reynolds would have been about 36 or 37. So there's probably about almost a 10-year age difference between the two of them. But it is really interesting. Apparently, he brought this up, the actor, anecdotally in something that I read, but apparently it's substantiated that it was very close. I have not found who the third actor was of this triumvirate, but apparently it was someone, Patrick Reynolds and Patrick Stewart. And it went to Patrick Stewart. I would say probably the correct choice.
Yeah.
I agree. I wonder if someone saw the Eliminators because of Denise Crosby's connection as well.
Yeah. I did just look this up, by the way. The third actor that they had secured for the part that they were really taking seriously was Eddie Deason. So
wow.
Would have been good. Would have been good, I think. Would have been a bold choice. Make it
Oh,
so. Yeah. Anyway,
holy moly.
that's for your nightmares. Yeah. So let's get into Eliminators because I think y'all are going to be taking the lead on some of the backstory on this movie more than I am because there just really isn't much information on this movie. It's a very hard movie to find. There is like an out of print DVD that's quite expensive if you want to track it down that way, or you can find some surreptitious methods. But it's a difficult movie to track down, and that's a real shame because this feels like it should have been like a basic cable staple. This feels like something that should just kind of always been on at 2 p.m. on a Sunday.
Especially because of what was going on in cinema at that time too. I mean, this is one of the really early cyborg human hybrid films, and I mean, it supersedes RoboCop by. And it even superseded the Canadian Vindicator film.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Empire film, but also features a human who's disfigured and put into a suit and made into basically a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And, all on the heels of like Blade Runner and Terminator, of course. But I don't know. Like, this doesn't get the play that it deserves. And maybe it's because I don't know if it ever really found its audience, unfortunately.
Yeah, it definitely strikes me as like a victim of the Empire bankruptcy, when they had to sell off their catalog piecemeal, and MGM bought most of it, but there are some movies that sort of fell through the cracks. And it seems like Eliminators might have been one of them. Because I don't even remember seeing this on video store shelves when I was growing up. Like this one didn't really ring any bells for me.
Yeah, poster's so amazing.
The poster's amazing, yeah.
That it would just jump off the shelf, and it sort of blends in. Unfortunately, I had never heard of it when we watched it for the first time. I was like, "Wow, where has this been my whole life?"
I would also argue.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know. I would think this is a kind of a bad title for this movie too, because they are never once referred to as the Eliminators or Eliminators at any point in this movie. It's not really what they do.
Steve, did you not see the cut with the Eliminators assemble scene?
Oh, no,
it brought a tear to my eye. I stood up and cheered.
Director's cut. Oh my gosh! Well,
that's the Snyder version. Yeah.
I wonder if it's maybe like Charles Band just wanting to have a letter early in the alphabet, so you scan the video shelves and then see.
It could be. Yeah, we need something next to ET. What do we have?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's strange that it just never really seemed to find its audience, but it looks like it like made its money back. It made like $4 million at the box office in '86, which is not a disaster. This could not have cost much more than that.
Well, the thing about this movie that's noteworthy though in that regard is that this was the biggest release that Empire had to this point. So this movie opened, I should say, in 993 screens. Now, Troll had opened in 959 screens, which was about 180 more than Metal Storm, which was, one of the larger theatrical releases, just, predating the formation of Empire. I think the last Charles Band production. But I think, they were expecting this to be a hit, and like. Shea, you brought up the poster because the poster is amazing. I mean, I've seen a couple of posters, but we know which one we're talking about. But I think, this is such a great example of one of the hallmarks of Empire at this time, which is kind of, and we mentioned it with all of its allusions to other films that already exist, but this is just like kitchen sink cinema where it's like, we're not gonna adhere to any like real genre restrictions. I mean, besides what we can't do budgetarily, it's like we have an idea, we're gonna go with it. It's gonna include a little of this, a little of this, a little of this. I mean, even on the poster, mercenary, ninja, mandroid, scientist.
Yeah,
it's like it's got all of these things. But one of the things, and this is probably as good a place as any to talk about this, because I know you had mentioned before that you wanted to talk a little bit more about the artwork of the poster. This is one of those movies that, yes, we know Charles Band's style and business model for how he would sell a movie, but this is a movie that delivers on its poster because I can think back to a lot of cover art for VHS stuff that I saw. Now, I always say the first like proper horror movie that I ever really saw was Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning as a kid. Now that's the same one for you too, Shay? I think the cover is cool, but you get this totally generic goalie mask that looks like it was just ripped off the face of Eddie Jockman and then put in front of this for them to take a picture with this like some light pink parchment paper in the eye holes so the light is kind of coming through. It's not Roy's mask, and Jason's mask has details on it, and so and there's no details on this mask. So I feel like watching it, I always thought it was weird because I said, why is this the cover? This is not, it almost looks more like the mask from Unmasked Part 25 to really dig deep. But the same thing, we're like a movie like Chopping Mall. Like you see Chopping Mall and it's like, okay, here's the cover art. It's like a zombified arm. It looks like ripping through the back of the poster and holding a shopping bag in its hand. That movie's about killer robots. And there's nothing indicating that on this poster. So I love the fact that no matter what the outcome of this movie, no matter what they were able to pull off, not pull off budgetarily, you look at the cover of this thing and there is a half man, half android on tank treads, and you get that thing in like minute 1 of this movie.
You do. They waste no time with that. It's I wrote down that excuse me. I wrote down in my notes while I was watching this that this is kind of a shock and awe approach to genre plot. Like they're going to bombard us with so many different genre tropes from so many different corners of the 80s that we're not really going to know what's going on, but we're going to be dazzled by it nonetheless. Like the plot here absolutely does not hold up. It doesn't make sense, some of the choices that they make, but the fact that they're just throwing it all at us like so consistently. Like I was not expecting them to be going through this bayou being chased by hillbillies and they run into a bunch of cavemen. Came out of nowhere, was not anticipating it. And then it's just sort of never spoken of again after they part. It's just one of these bizarre things. But I was here for it, and I just loved how it kind of felt like they were testing it out to see, all right, which one of these threads hits so we can decide what Eliminators 2 is going to be. Like, is that going to be a Mandroid movie? Is that going to be a mercenary movie? Like, what's Mandroids or what's Eliminators 2 going to be?
Yeah,
well, it's going to be a werewolf story about Mandroid's true closeted feelings.
Perfect. Yes, let's do that.
Like, take my money.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, I so agree with both of you. This is what I like to call meathead logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like one thing after the other, and then, and yeah, like it's the kitchen sink, like you said, it's the party mix, it's the bowl of candy at Halloween. Like there's just a bunch of stuff in there. None of it is particularly nutritional, but it is delightful. And yeah, it's like everything's beefed up to the max. And also, like, I feel like this is a plot that was written to accommodate the plot devices. That's such a cool thing that often happens in these movies and these Empire Picture productions. I mean, yeah, what do we need? We need a ninja. Ninjas are popular. They're going to sell. We need time travel.
Yeah.
A cyborg in there. Let's make the cyborg get a shield from Centurion times. Let's have like a Bond style villain who's like a mad genius and like has a disfigured face.
Yeah.
And really enthusiastic, very old sidekick. Like it's also something you don't see too often in mad science type film. Oh, this Igor guy, he's really nice. Like he's really sweet to the Mandroid. They have such a sweet relationship.
They do. They have a whole thing. But yeah, it's just that this movie starts and you think, okay, this is a bit of a Terminator knockoff. It's a robot who can travel in time. Okay, I'm on board with that. And that really does not turn out to be what this movie is. 90% of this, or not 90%, let's say 60% of this movie owes more to Walking Tall and Smokey and the Bandit than it does to anything science fiction. Like there is a whole lot of time spent like with swamp boat chases and like crazy hillbillies like throwing goofy punches and falling in the water. Like there's a lot of that in this movie.
Well, sure. And not only, Andrew Prine sort of plays the Bill Maher role here, and it turns into Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death for a second.
It absolutely does. Yeah, no. And like you forget that like one of the guys in the boat is just like a robot, because the plot becomes so mundane that they're just like traveling down the river. It's like, oh yeah, that guy's got a half robot face.
And he's just got like a rain poncho and like a fedora, and he's got this white cloth wrapped around his cyborg eye, and then
crazy knocked out gas.
I was gonna say he either looks like Peyton Westlake from Darkman, or kind of 3 toddlers in a trench coat when he first walks up into her lab.
Again, once more confirming my theory that somebody on the community writing staff is a fan of Empire films. This is very much Kick Puncher. If you've ever watched that show, Abed's obsessed with a bad movie series called Kick Puncher. It's just this. It's this character design. It's this level of production value. Like, so somebody's absolutely, I'm really like convinced at this point. But yeah, it never gives you a chance to, it just never like slows down enough for you to think any of these things through. And you're really entertained the entire time in this movie. Everybody's just kind of committed to it and having a good time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, the structure is really interesting because at the beginning of the film feels almost like the way that most films like this would end.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like, wow, the Mandroid is busted loose. He's free. And, but then like the middle kind of feels a little bit like the beginning and the middle, and then the end kind of feels like the middle, like everything feels off a little bit in the way that it's delivered. But I don't know. The Mandroid himself is, I guess maybe it's his performance, but or Patrick Reynolds' performance. It's so akin to what Paul Weller sort of went for with Alex Murphy in RoboCop.
Yeah.
And I don't say that he watched it, but the way that he approached the character is so good. And I mean, the first time I saw it, I was laughing at how wooden and stiff and kind of detached from everything that he is.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sure we'll get to this, but his very deep nihilistic existential crisis near the end where he just wants to be killed, basically. But I don't know. I thought it was a really hilarious performance at first. And I think on the second watch, or maybe my third watch actually at this point, I was actually kind of moved by some of his moments. I know it sounds silly, but
no.
Yeah, he actually put a lot of heart into the performance. And I don't know, like it's an Empire Pictures film. Like it is not being billed on its famous actors. This is, there's a term for this kind of film that I can't remember at this exact moment, but it's basically like, I don't know, like you don't need a lot of flashy actors to pull this off and a lot of, big names, but Charles Band has his team. He has John Carl Buechler working on effects, and he has Mac Alberg on cinematography. So all of the tropes are in place. All the look is in place.
Yeah. The band of brothers, as we call them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, what was I just going to say? Oh my God. I totally blanked. Excuse me. Sorry. Go ahead. Ignore me. I'm blanking.
Oh no, you're totally fine. I'm looking for the thing that I blanked on.
Wow, it is going around. It is like early afternoon for all of us right now, and we are just zonking out of it. But yeah, I mean, I did want to shout out the tank treads. I think we need to talk about these tank treads because I laughed very loud when I first saw this thing. Because all right, it's one thing to say like, okay, it's a cyborg who has like an attachment that turns him into a half man, half tank. I'm like, okay, I can get behind that. There's ways you can visually do that. That's cool. The design that they go for is kind of making the Mandroid a hood ornament. Like he's jutting way out front, like he's the Lady Gaga as a motorcycle. And you're just like, I'm just worried he's going to tip over the entire time. Like it's pretty gyroscopically stable for the most part. And then eventually at the end of the movie, he does tip over. He just hits a rock and flops over onto his side.
Oh, you know who else was worried about him tipping over? Patrick Reynolds.
I can imagine.
And he was bolted into the tank treads. And so he says in Empire of the Bees that when it goes down the steps, he was afraid that it was actually going to tip over, and had it tipped over on him, it would have instantly killed him because it would have basically bent him in half. And there was another time too where it kind of falls down this path that's going into the darkness, and there was a person who was controlling it, like a small crew member who was inside driving it. And the way it was designed, there was only like a small peephole that this person could see out of, and they apparently drove off where the shot ends, and there was like a truck that was parked outside or something that was there that they almost hit, and they didn't. But there was a big thing, like he was saying, the way it was situated, he would have like very easily. But he talks about potentially being killed no fewer than 3 times.
Yeah,
based on this Mandroid tank treads and outfit and everything. So
I
props
can really
to him
believe it.
for sticking with all this.
Yeah, that puts a twist on everything that I think now about this film, because the first time I saw Mandroid go down the stairs, I almost died laughing. And before he even puts himself in it, he says, "I'll need my mobile unit."
Makes him dramatically less mobile. Let's be honest here. Like he maybe it rests his legs for longer stretches, but he is limiting his mobility by quite a bit, trying to navigate that big clunky tread around.
Two quick thoughts that I have. One of them is, were any of you able to hear the word mobile unit and not just start picturing a G.I. Joe commercial in your head?
Oh, right.
Because
yeah.
That was all I could think of. It's just like that, it being sold to me, like so-and-so in their mobile unit thing. But I heard that, and immediately I was like, that is a G.I. Joe pitch in a commercial if I've ever heard one. But the phrase mobile unit was so funny to me too, because a genuine laugh that I got, that I think this is intentional. I don't, because knowing what I know about Bilson and DeMeo, I think this was supposed to make you laugh. When Mandroid is talking to Denise Crosby and she's kind of healing him, like he says mobile unit, obviously, and then he says something about my arms, and then he says the phrase leg units, talking about his legs. And I'm like, that has to be a joke. Like, it's just the fact that he doesn't say arm units, but he says leg units was just hilarious to me. Like, I love that.
He's actually a conehead. No, you're so right. Like, all that unit stuff is so funny. And one of the arcs that brings me so much delight with Mandroid is that he's supposed to be so useful, and he just seems to get more and more useless as the film progresses. Like, he tries to save a few characters and he just can't quite do it. Like, Crosby goes into his plane in the river and she's swimming around and looking for clues about who he is, which is also, interestingly enough, a RoboCop trope. The plane starts to sink and she starts to freak out, and he says, "Try to save you." He says, "I'll save you." He says, "I'll try to save you." And then he shoots this dinky little arrow with like a little string into the plane and starts pulling it to shore, and it gets caught on a branch, and then someone else has to save her. And
Mandroid's greatest nemesis, a branch. Yes. Yeah.
Well, listen, he's learning what it means to become human.
And we are all constantly vexed by branches. So yeah, absolutely. This is the most important part of being a human, I would argue.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Another point when the boat is careening around the corner, and oh my God, who was it? Andrew Prine's character. What was he called again?
Fontana. Fontana.
I could not hear Fontana without thinking of Murphy Brown. That's
okay.
Frank Fontana is every time they said Fontana, I just was like, I could just thinking of Joe Regalabuto, the actor from Murphy Brown. Why do I know that guy's name off the top of my head?
Because that's an amazing, like, Italian name. That's like a classic name.
That's so good. But yeah, Fontana's like, "Hold on." And then it cuts to the Mandroid, like, slowly, stiffly tipping over backward and head first plunging into the brown river water. I'm just like, oh my God, poor Mandroid. And then they're like, "Oh, we've lost him forever. He's too deep in the mud." And oh well, let's go on.
Yeah.
Like, poor Mandroid. He
And
just wants to be loved.
there are a lot of parts where it really does emphasize that like Bilson and DeMeo know this is a comedy and are leaning into it. And I think the big one that made me laugh was the walking up to the hillbilly bar and saying the toughest person can be my guide. And immediately it breaks out in a cartoony, like Old West bar fight with people being thrown over the bar. I'm just like, all right, this is on this whole weird plane. Like you're really kind of trying to have all of your cakes and eating all of them. And including like almost making this a bit of a kids movie, or at least leaving the door open for this being a kids movie, because we have an adorable little robot sidekick named Spot, who is like something a kid would glom onto, you know, like you could absolutely see, like I was saying, they're screen testing and figuring out what they want the sequel to be. They're okay with it being a kids movie. You know, they've got this little guy who's ready to be marketed.
Definitely, there's this total Star Wars element to that. And I can't help but think that Charles Band is also injecting some of his obsession with superhero comics and comics in general into the narrative. It's almost like he can't not do that. You know, we got
he's absolutely like a little Herbie from Fantastic Four. Is that his name? His little robot sidekick.
Totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is like such a cool category of film too. I just love like when there's a group of these really highly specialized, almost like unidimensional characters.
Oh yeah.
Like kind of like they coalesce into a heroic homunculus. So
I love a getting a team together movie. You know, I love like a Dirty Dozen or a Great Escape or Avengers or things like that. Like, and this definitely has that spirit. And they're just culling from so many weird sources. We haven't even mentioned the ninja, because he comes in like with only like 20 minutes left of the movie. Like he comes in quite late into the film. It's a really weird time to be introducing this whole other element of this movie, which is this martial arts master who can deflect bullets with a sword. And he doesn't honestly even do that much for the amount of screen time that he has, right?
He can levitate a fish from the river. That's impressive.
I mean, this is kind of just like we're veering into the canon films school of filmmaking now, which is like we're missing something. Insert a ninja.
Oh, 100%. 100%. This was like I kept thinking of Ninja 3, The Dominion. Or,
no,
the Domination. Excuse me, The Domination.
Great.
I love that movie so much. But yeah, this one had that little bit of that energy and like.
Okay, from Breakin'.
Yes, yeah.
You know, Lucinda Dickey, she had a moment. She had a minute there in like 1984 where she was in Breakin' and Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo and Ninja 3 The Domination. And you know what? She is really amiable and she's got a nice screen presence. I was kind of surprised that, I mean, I know canon films were, you know, similarly to Empire and stuff, kind of more a low budget, but Menachem Golem and Urim Globus, they would put up money. Like they put up more money. I mean, those guys paid fucking $25 million to make Over the Top. So
right, yeah.
So they're different from Empire and Full
price
Moon
that
in that way.
I'm gonna say that budget a little over the top.
Yeah,
a little over the top. I'm just gonna say it.
The budget for Masters of the Universe was kind of insane too.
It was
a movie
about
that takes place entirely in a mall. Yeah.
It was about the same as Over the Top, and those two movies I think were the ones that spelled sort of the demise of Canon Pictures, because you know, for a low budget film studio, you can't be spending $50+ million on only two films that both flop.
I hope that the majority of that budget went to Frank Langella, because he was earning it in that movie. He is going for it so hard. No one could sell Skeletor as a character as hard as Frank Langella does in that movie.
No, and canon movies are ridiculous, and this movie is ridiculous in all the right ways. And we're talking about it now with a lot of time between when this movie was released and obviously sort of the lenses through which people are viewing it now. But the thing was this movie was very negatively received when it came out, to the point where Charles Band basically issued an apology in an interview where he basically tried to explain it by saying he thought Bilson and DeMeo's script was the best script they'd ever read. He said the script read so well, and then he kind of went through explaining how sometimes things on the page don't translate well, and sometimes there's amazing scripts and they just don't work for some reason as movies, kind of alluding to the fact that he thought this was a failure or one that didn't work. And even he was really dismissive of it. And I think now, I think the way we're viewing it now is probably closer to what Bilson and DeMeo and other people would have wanted. I mean, it's a low budget movie that's taking a lot of big swings, and they're not all going to hit them all out of the park. So it's like, yeah, we can bring attention to something that's really silly or something that doesn't work. But I think we're kind of recognizing that there's a lot of inherent intentional comedy built into this too, which I don't think, because Empire of the Bees kind of plays it that a lot of the cast and crew felt like they were making a dead serious movie, and then it was reviewed initially by some circuits as a spoof. I feel like it's somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And I think we're approaching this material the correct way, if I may say so myself.
I think so.
Absolutely. Yeah. The term I was trying to come up with before was high concept, where it's the concept more than the elements within it. And I absolutely agree. This is a film that has something akin to lightning in a bottle, where I think that it maybe wasn't meant to have the kind of magic that it has, but it just sort of does. And also comparatively to Peter Manoogian's other filmography, this is my favorite Peter Manoogian film. And it has something that Arena doesn't and Seed People doesn't quite have, which is just I don't know. It's like it's kind of falling on a different side of the spectrum. Like it's not disingenuous, and it's totally earnest, but it's completely for the audience, and I think that he's completely aware of what he's doing, but he's also like, this is ridiculous, but I'm going to deliver this to you with 1000% ambition and structure, and I'm going to put everything I have into it. Like the fact that they built a tank. I mean, it's terrifying that Patrick Reynolds was bolted into it. Jeez Louise. But the fact that they built this fully functional robot for this film is absolutely incredible. And there aren't a lot of B films that have that, really. It's just a special kind of, it's a good time. It's the kind of thing you can watch at 2 a.m. On your faded old VHS, or you can get a group of friends together and just have the best time.
And I think this is one of the perfect movies for that, for getting people together for I don't even want to you really even use the phrase bad movie night, but you want to get a bunch of people together for a movie and show them something that's going to elicit reactions from people. I think this is perfect in that way for that. I think this is absolutely a movie that you can, like you said, that you can put this thing on and people are going to be laughing at some of the decisions, but they're still going to be engaged in what's happening, and they're still going to be following along with the story. And it's like, they're going to react to the moments of intentional humor and the things that the movie does well. Also, I think that, this is just one of those movies that's prime for that sort of presentation.
And if something's not working for you, wait 5 minutes. It's going to be a totally different movie with a totally different vibe every couple of minutes, So you're not really into the futuristic sci-fi thing. Don't worry. We're doing, sexy scientist and meets rugged Han Solo type in the jungle. It's fine. Just hang in there. We've got all the genres covered.
Roy Scheider type.
Roy Scheider type.
Sorcerer. That's another movie that this is kind of borrowing from.
A little bit of Sorcerer. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
And there's Denise Crosby's side boob also.
There we go. See,
oh my God.
See, so that way, if it's not really just appealing to kids with the tiny robot, we've got some slight side nudity for the older people. Maybe that one will take. The next one will be a Torchlight film. Who knows?
And Tasha Yar, the character, is only really prevalent in the first season of TNG.
Yeah,
she comes back for a couple episodes here and there later on, but I think it's only the second episode of the entire series is one where everyone on the Enterprise starts acting weird and horny, and I think she kisses Data in that, so she's got quite the track record of kissing up on some
weird guys,
some androids.
Yeah.
fully functional mobile unit himself.
It's true. His leg units are functional and everything. Yeah, not his arms, just his leg units.
Leg units, yeah.
I like to think that he refers to it as his mobile unit, his fully functional mobile unit.
That's right. He says that in First Contact. I am fully functional.
First Contact, so good.
So good.
We haven't talked about Roy Dotrice, who, interestingly, he plays Reeves, or as he is known in this movie. And I really enjoy the fact that it's this actor in this role, because I don't know him from a ton of stuff, a lot of British film, but I do know him as Leopold, the father of Mozart in Amadeus, which is one of my very favorite movies of all time. And his performance as Leopold is so much fun in that movie. He's just so dour and unapproving of everything, and just this huge specter that leans over Tom Hulce's Mozart the whole time, because he couldn't give a fuck about Salieri. Here's someone he cares about.
Roy Dotrice is of an interesting class of celebrity that, as far as I can tell, only has two guys. Are classical British theater actors with very, very long careers who became household names towards the end of their lives for reading audiobooks. Because Roy Dotrice read all of the Game of Thrones audiobooks, which were huge, huge sellers. The only other person I can think of in that category is Jim Dale, who read all the Harry Potter audiobooks. And they were both those are two of the biggest selling audiobook series of all time. And so those guys became sort of household names for a younger generation just by dint of recording these audiobooks.
Dang, I had no idea he did that. That's such a trip. He has the perfect voice for that.
Oh, yeah. Great voice for that. Yeah.
And Mandroid. He has such a way of pronouncing things that it just gets stuck in your head.
I love that he shows up in this. Yeah, this is 2 years after Amadeus, and he's showing up in Eliminators as a mad scientist, and he's committing and he's having fun. I like these old British character actors like that who were unfussy about roles they took. Like David Warner absolutely could have been seen as a higher class of actor, but he just said yes to everything. He's like, oh, sure, I'll be in your Ninja Turtles 2 movie. Why not?
Sure, I'll let that pane of glass take my head clean off.
Absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Need someone to go on a quest for the Delta Knights? I'll play 2 characters. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. And to be willing to go through all the makeup and the hair and just to really throw themselves fully into the ridiculousness of it. Yeah. That's definitely a good personality.
Those are my goals. That's what I hope I age into as I get older as an actor. I just want to age into a fussy old man who'll just do every movie. I'll just show up being a crazy mad scientist and everything. So
those are good life goals. Definitely.
So you'll just take over from Eric Roberts.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to get into the Eric Roberts zone. I want to be like a wholesome Eric Roberts. Yeah.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about Eric Roberts, listen to our episode about The Dead Want Women, which came out very recently.
Last week, I believe. Yeah. So enjoy that.
Listening to that because I've just recently started watching more Eric Roberts movies. So sign me up.
There's not enough time left in your life, Shea.
Yeah, that is a futile effort. If anyone out there is an Eric Roberts completist, that is a futile effort because by the time you catch up with the list, he will have doubled it. He will have done another 700 movies.
Oh man, that's insane. The one we just watched was is it The Ambulance? Larry Cohen he's in that one. Right?
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Super fun movie. They just did that at Nighthawk Cinema by me, a part of their Ridiculous Sublime, and it's funny because the month before they did that one, they showed Rennie Harlin's Prison. And the timing of that was so perfect because it was literally played 2 nights before we were scheduled to record our episode on Prison. And so I went to the theater to watch it, which was amazing. But then the one from last month was The Ambulance. And it's a Larry Cohen. And I mean, Larry Cohen is great. And
he's always fun.
That's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's a very New York feeling film. It's in New York, of course, but I love that underground sort of black market sort of trope in action movies. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, Mandroid is in this movie, obviously, and the seed for a Mandroid character is something that had existed for a while, or some version of it through a lot of Charles Band. And we have not covered it yet, but we will get to the Mandroid movie proper for Full Moon. Related in name only, my understanding.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that one in a little while. But then also, I think that the character of Mandroid, I feel like one of our guests was talking about the history of this, the name at least of the character a little bit, and they talked about another movie called Invisible: The Chronicles of Benjamin Knight, which also I think includes a Mandroid character.
Yeah, I believe so, because these were going to be the members of Charles Band's like Marvel-esque super team of characters. Like, you know, it's gonna be Dr. Mordred and Invisible and Dark Angel and Mandroid. Like, these were going to be his own little makeshift Avengers if he'd gotten to do his shared universe.
Yes, these were the things that they were working on and then scrapped the shared universe to attempt initially to do that theatrically released Puppet Master 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That's
which did not happen. Yeah, which did not happen ultimately, but would have been fun. Yeah, I appreciate that he was on top of that and was trying to create his own like little universe that never quite clicked.
Yeah, definitely. He loved doing that, and he loved building on franchises and then combining those universes, and that would have been really, really cool. I did notice that Reeves at the end of this film has, of course, a transformation. He looks very decrepit and kind of covered in boils, and like he looks just gross. And then at the end of the film, he looks like Dr. Mordred or Iron Man, even. Like, he's just got this red suit on, it's metallic, and he's pretty menacing. And I don't know how far we want to go into the spoiler zone, but
spoiler away.
Like the fact that Mandroid is essentially reduced to a heap of rubble in the center of this courtyard, which, oh my gosh, by the way, the courtyard, the whole setting. Was this made in the castle that he owned? Was this
no? Weirdly, this was all shot in Spain, which is a shame because I don't think he owned the castle yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in '86, I don't think he had the castle yet.
Okay, that would make sense because the environment is so different from what you'd expect. Like, you have this technological robot man roaming these halls that look like they were built in the 1500s.
Right.
Really epic looking courtyard. And then suddenly this huge gang of 80s looking bad guys with rifles are coming out of the woodwork, like out of the cracks of the stone. I'm like, where are these like 50 dudes coming from? They all work for Reeves, apparently.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lights and fog, which of course is one of my favorite tropes.
Of course.
Filmmaking, and Empire has tons, has it in spades. And essentially Mandroid is reduced to a heap. And we progress through the culmination of the story, and it ends in a freeze frame that does not include the Mandroid. I was like,
yeah.
Mandroid died on the way back to his home planet.
Yeah, dick move, leaving him out. Yeah, what happened there?
Yeah, it was fucked up. So I was kind of hoping there would be a sequel, and then actually I did rent Mandroid years ago after watching the Eliminators, thinking like, oh my God, he's alive again.
It's his origin story.
Totally unrelated, yeah, but
yeah, maybe it is. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Well, that was Eliminators. A whole lot of fun. Definitely, if you have a way to track it down and check it out, I recommend doing so. Hopefully, it will become more available over time. Someone will sort out those rights or realize they're kind of sitting on a weird little cult gem here, and we can get it distributed. But in the meantime, thank you so much to Shea for being back here. It's always a delight to have you on the show, and thank you for bringing this movie to our attention.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back. This is a blast.
Anytime. Now, where can people find your stuff if you want to promote anything that you've got coming up?
Absolutely. I have a Squarespace store. It is Black VVideo _ at Squarespace. Oh, wait, is it underscore? There's an underscore somewhere in there. If you Google Black Video and Squarespace, you'll find me.
There you go.
On Instagram and on Facebook. And Shea Mossefin, also on Facebook, if you want to say hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I did want to say hi. Hello.
And Shay, while I have you here, I'm not going to go get it, but I am going to tell you that I recently made a nice purchase on eBay of something I've been wanting to get my hands on for a while. And this will tie to the Arrow Video podcast because I've heard you do an episode on this one movie, which is a movie that is a favorite of yours and of myself. I got the Carter Burwell's Psycho 3 original score on vinyl.
There you go.
My
Good
God.
find. Good find.
So stoked for you. Oh, I have to see that.
I know.
Please.
It's what's that?
Please show me if you get a chance.
I'll send you a picture of it.
Yes.
It's great though, and it's a score that I really love. And I have Jerry Goldsmith's Psycho 2 score on vinyl. I shockingly don't have Bernard Herrmann's original Psycho score on vinyl, which would be kind of the one I think people would look for. But when I found it for a very reasonable price, I said I had to snatch that up. And I know you guys did an episode on the Arrow Video podcast and just about Psycho 3. And I listened to, I always listen to those and the ones you did with the Warriors. John Tarani was on one recently with a little bit about the robot jocks for the, from some stuff coming out for the novelization. I think he was talking about actually.
That's right.
Robot jocks, which is awesome.
Yeah. So cool. He saved some special info just for us. And yeah, he's just like a walking encyclopedia and a delightful person. So it was so cool to have him on. And I loved listening to your episodes with him too.
Yeah, he was great. He's always a great resource for anything giant robot related.
Yeah, he sure is. Now we're like one big happy family here between hosts and guests and listeners. And listeners, if you like what we do, then jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop us a little 5-star rating and maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. You can find us on all kinds of social media on Instagram at puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can follow me personally at _Giallo_Jerry or Steve at Minotaur Matador. We're on YouTube and Threads, Blue Sky, all the social media. You can find us on any of them. You can also find Steve promoting another show. Steve, what's the other show that you have got promoting at this time?
Oh, that show is called Cinema Arcade. It's about movies and video games. We watch a movie and we play the video game adaptation of it to see how they compare, contrast, or get really weird with it. And yeah, we're quite a bit ahead on this show than we are on that show. So I'm not really sure where we're at, but we recently covered Mask of Zorro and we're talking about The Italian Job, both versions. Lots of fun stuff coming up for that show. So check it out.
What's coming up for us?
Yeah, you got to be sure to check us out next week as well. We're pivoting a little bit because we are going to be going back to Moonbeam Country to talk about a little movie called Pet Shop. A lot of adorable little weird monsters that live, you're never going to believe this, in a pet shop.
What?
Yeah. Well, another one of those hugely successful movies that Moonbeam did. I think this was the follow-up to Prehysteria, and after that is one of their more successful films they've ever done. So it's going to ring a lot of bells for a lot of people. It's not one that I've ever seen, but a lot of people are going to be like, oh shit, I watched that movie as a kid.
Yeah, it's crazy. We haven't been in Moonbeam territory for kind of a while. And when we were starting out the show, a lot of people were talking about Prehysteria and some of the other Moonbeam movies. And so we didn't really look at them as being that important to cover. It's like, oh, we'll get to them eventually. But they're movies people really love. And I don't think Pet Shop is any different. So listeners, you heard us. Join us next week for a little Moonbeam action while we talk about Pet Shop. See you then.